Hello, welcome to JagaVision, episode 64. We are live every Thursday, and I am your host, Nyberg. I'm co-owner of JagaSilk. Really happy to bring you a pretty awesome episode. We're going to be talking about firing tea in Mandokoro, going on a trip that we did in 2018, and just discussing some of the things that we learned about firing tea. I have one of the selections actually that we picked up when we took the team there in 2019, and we just have a new batch coming in that was harvested for 2021, having missed 2020 due to the pandemic. So exciting times ahead. So we'll be cupping that one in a little bit. What's kind of interesting about this, normally we're really all about keeping things fresh. So if we're talking about sencha, if we're talking about matcha, we really want it to be fresh. And even our crimson teas, we like to say that there's an expiry of about 15 to 18 months from the harvest date. What's interesting about these more Zaidaishu, these heirloom seed-grown cultivars, is they seem to stand up really well and age really nicely. And we've heard conversations about that in white tea production too. That if you take a clonal species or something that you've grown from a cutting rather than from seed, you don't get as much out of it. Like, you're not going to get that same resilience as you would with a seed-grown variety. So this community in Shiga, Mandokoro, is one of the older tea-growing regions in Japan. They do a bang-up job. This particular village traces its origins back at least 500 years. So that's saying something. Make their tea go. So, and honestly, when we think Japanese tea, we think green tea. So the fact that I'm going to be making a crimson tea is already in and of itself a little unusual. But, you know, after World War II, Japan was producing a lot of crimson teas. Like, that was a major part of what they did. And this whole movement towards green tea is actually somewhat of a modern phenomenon, in that, I mean, it being like the majority of what they produce. All right, pretty stoked about these two. Hey, check this out. Tap the top. Bam! Tells you the temperature. Pretty sweet. Okay. I think that was backwards because I'm using a different camera today. It did say 99 degrees. You have to trust me on that, not 66. Or what have you. Okay, so I like to start my sessions off on JagaVision by making a tea that I've never had before. This particular situation, I'm breaking my rules, and I'm having tea that I have had before. But I haven't had it for a while, and this tea does develop over time. And that's something that I was trying to say just now, is that even though this is a 2019 harvest, and we're sitting quite a long time after the fact, it's still going to taste good. That's what's awesome about it. I was talking to Yamaguchi on one of the episodes, and I sort of get confused about how much was discussed on the show and how much was discussed in our pre-talk, because we had quite a extensive pre-talk. And, you know, I was really interested by the fact that he said that our white teas, you know, he's experimenting with some white tea production. He finds that when he does make them out of the cuttings, the normal tea bushes that they cultivate in Japan, he doesn't get anywhere near the complexity of flavor that he does if he uses wild teas. And not just any wild teas. He likes to source leaves from wild teas that he has a good reason to believe are over 100 years old. So let's see what we can do. So, not showing the camera anything. I guess you can't really see what's going on today. So I got a slightly new setup. I'm in a different area right now. But this is a very amber brown liquid color. We call this tea kocha. Zairaishu by Kawakami. This is the Autumn Harvest. I never actually released this one. We had too little, so I'm drinking it. You won't be, but there is some new stuff, 2021, coming soon, that you will be able to get your hands on. They only produce as little as 18 kilograms of finished product. And I'm going to take you on a little bit of a tour so you can see a little bit about why that might be. It's quite a laborious process. Yeah. It's kind of like a caramel apricot. It's a lovely tea. Last week we had Eric Smith on the show to unveil the tea clinic, and a couple times on JagaVision we've invited Pedro from 05. I had both of them in my tea bar before the pandemic, and we were drinking this tea, and they know more about ancient teas than I do. I'm more of a I guess a lot of my time in tea has been spent on matcha and Japanese greens. But they were both really impressed with this tea, so that said a lot for me. And the more I drink it, and the more since then I've come to spend some time with some earthier, some aged teas, the more I'm understanding just how fascinating and complex these teas can be. Sometimes I think when we're drinking Japanese greens, we put a lot of focus on umami, on richness, and we don't put as much focus on floral dynamics, the sort of really interesting brightness, bitters, and enjoying how they might interweave with umami and rich flavors. And our quest for umami and our quest for richness can somewhat overwhelm origin flavor. We start going for a homogeneous sort of concept of what's perfect, and I think that that we can drink a tea like a sencha from an origin such as Mandokoro and not quite understand what it's trying to say. At first glance or at first taste, you'll drink it and you'll be like, this actually tastes kind of like a low grade sencha, but the more you spend time with it, the more you understand just how complex it is. That was just a very thin skin, and below that layer is some really interesting flavors, some really complex flavors. And there's just a grassy note to it, or a noticeably less present umami that makes you feel that way. But the more you spend time with it, the more you understand there's just so much going on. But I personally like having tea from this region as a crimson tea, or as what we would call black tea in North America, because I feel that, it's just it's easier to drink it without biases. We all have this. If we're really into our senchas, we kind of have an idea of what sencha should taste like, what it should look like. And I imagine that's the case for many people drinking crimson teas from a particular origin, like, from the Darjeeling region, it's going to look and be this particular way. And to a point, if this tea that I'm drinking right now didn't have body and a certain malty basiness to it, I probably would be disappointed in it as a crimson tea. But I feel I can drink it with less bias, and I enjoy it a lot. I seek this tea out without even really thinking about it, and that's actually a sign to me that something is something's right about the tea if I'm just sort of seeking it out without really thinking about it. Okay, so I'm supposed to be joined by Sister Speak. I'm gonna see what I can do to bring her on the call. Just send out another invite to her. It's been a little bit challenging getting her on the show for the past couple sessions. So let's hope that today is the day. and that she does join us. We'll see what happens. Okay, so I guess I'll get right into it. I would love to actually present some slides of that 2018 trip I was talking about. Okay. Okay. No. Something's going on. Hold on one sec. Maybe that'll work. I think that's going to work. And you guys, what are you seeing? You're seeing the Be Right Back window. Okay. And here's... Yeah, okay. Awesome. This is going to work. Okay, so, this is Miu and I. My wife and I were at Origin. The two folks in the center there are Mr. and Mrs. Kawakami. They are the ones who got us this lovely tea, who produced this lovely tea, and who allowed us to join them for a session in 2018. So we actually had the good fortune of going to Mandokoro. It's an amazingly beautiful city. Yeah, I really, I love to visit. I love going back. How come this isn't letting me do anything? Okay. Let me see. So why is that not letting me move to a different photo? Interesting. I know. This is why. Okay, so yeah, these are just some example of the tea fields. This is Mr. Kawakami harvesting the tea. What was interesting is just how they're growing. So you see how they're not in hedges. A lot of times you will find that tea farmers will grow hedges of tea because it's just a little bit easier to manage. You can use harvesting equipment. It's going to make your life easier. Whereas here, this is all harvested by hand, so it actually makes a lot more sense to make it into these sort of circular bushes so that you can just kind of work your way around each bush and get more product as a result. I was actually really amazed at how fast they would harvest. They also did a very interesting style. Normally you talk about 2 leaves in a bud. In Mandokoro, they actually strip the young leaves off the tip. Yeah. Okay. And she's the veteran picker, Kyoko-san. And they want to show us a veteran harvester and what that kind of speed can look like, and also just some tips on how to do it well. Okay. They're suggesting that I just have a different camera angle. So she's just explaining that they get to this point, but they're just showing this for the camera. But normally they would harvest a little different. So very experienced picker, getting right in there. Kind of amazing. Appears that you guys might be having an issue with being able to see everything. Let me see. No, you should be able to see now. So some pretty amazing speed there.
できたらね、こうやって取れるときはね、すごくと。
あ、はい。
もうね、
で、茎を。
ここをポンとして、これはもう
Pretty amazing.
あ、はい。
硬い刃が。
まあだけど、まあ新芽だけど。
ほんでこれが新芽なのね、これ。
まあ言うたら新しい、よう言うけど全部新しい。
これもだよ。ここも硬いね。
お父さん
でこれ新芽やろ。ほんでこれはもうそのままで取って。
口が。
こうが口が一番。
口でこう。
ちなみに今年茶葉はようできてます。
Mr. Kawakami is actually tasting the quality difference here with
いいお茶ができてます。
by eating the leaves raw. It's pretty funny.
冷たい寒いのがいきなり暖かくなるのは
それがねよくわからん。よそのカリ茶とかこう点そろ
So I was asking just if when it gets warm quickly, is that going to affect the acid levels in the leaves? And she was saying that it has more to do with the the terrain, and it's gonna be different from farm to farm.
あ、はい。
全部です。
Okay, so now it's repeating the video, so just go to the next one. Okay,
こういうのがあかんね、これ。こういうのついとるでしょ。これをもう入れるんダメ、これ。
そうですね。ツヤツヤで。
虫に弱い人。
こういうのがあかんね、これ。
and here's Mew harvesting some tea. She's one of the co-owners of the company. First time on JagaVision, I think. You can we get right in there. You harvest right from the bottom all the way to the top, and it's quite interesting because this is really different than how you would normally hear about how harvests should be done. Again, 2 leaves in a bud is definitely the norm, and to have this kind of leaf stripping method is really unusual. Not that we've been to a million tea farms, but from what we have read and what we've seen, this is a really unusual way of harvesting. Here I am, harvesting away. That's the village in the background. So lots of trying to get a good shot. Leaves in the basket. Here I'm gonna just scroll ahead. Oh, there you go. Be pretty happy with the leaves, and you're pretty happy with her harvest. This is me harvesting away. So there seems to be a little bit of an issue with the video. Hopefully everybody's seeing this okay. Where it is it might be a little bit challenging. I hope that's not the case. Let me see if making it a smaller screen actually helps. Yeah, that seems to help. Okay, I think I might have fixed the video issue. Okay, yeah, I can see it on my broadcast software now, so hopefully you guys can see it too. Okay, awesome. Okay, problem solved. Here we are again, holding leaves. I don't want to bore you too much with this stuff, but hauling the leaves out. This is Jared the Giant. Going on a pretty steep hill, too.
The video.
It's going to take a moment to load. doesn't look as steep as it is. It's actually really challenging to not fall over. It's a noticeably challenging terrain. Okay. And then what he's done is there's some green tea production that's happening here, and I do want to come back to that, but for today, rather than going and showing you some of these amazing, this is green tea being manufactured in an old factory in Mandokoro. Rather than focusing on that today, I'd love to talk a little bit about these guys. So I'm going into the tea toasting. So we harvested in a different area for the kocha. They did experiment with planting in rows. It wasn't as ideal for just how much you can get out of it. We had a really nice crimson tea with them, and what we did is we actually grabbed the leaves from the harvest down in, they called it, I think it was east of the river. Kawanishi. It might have been west of the river. Can't quite remember. And we put it onto this raised bed and let it dry with fans blowing on it for 10 hours overnight. And then here I am just bringing it over to the shop, and we're going to throw it into this machine that essentially bruises the leaves pretty good. This is a nice big analog scale, and just going to get a sense of the leaves. What we're doing here is getting a sense of how much moisture is lost at any given time. Looks like he's happy. He's lost about 20% of the moisture in the leaves, if I remember correctly. And he's able to measure that by just taking the measurement of the leaves before he put it on the raised beds and again afterwards. And then what we do is we put it into this unit that bruises the leaves. I don't know if I have any video. But it's you basically have this mallet on the inside. You can see it at the top there, and it's just slowly depressing and bruising the leaves and really working them. Then we put it into this fermenting room, and we have a very controlled moisture levels, etc. And we're able to get it to a place where it's ready to rock and roll. While it was fermenting, we did take a little bit of a trip around the village. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous area. Look at this. Just glorious. The mist. I just love this shot. The really unique roofs and the mist. You could just look at this all day. Yeah. I think I took 1 million photos from this angle. Just the bridge in the background, and I think I took some video panorama. Yeah. This is real. We were here. Really, really gorgeous. Okay. So, went for a little bit of a trek. This is actually some old school gyokuro thatch over top of the leaves. They say that this particular type of weave over top of the gyokuro, the rain falls, and then apparently it's like how it mixes with the soil after the rain falls through this particular type of material. Helps to improve the flavor of the tea. Something I found really unfortunate in Mandokoro is just how the community is not very famous currently. You don't hear a lot of people drinking Mandokoro tea in Japan at the moment. And so a few decades ago, they transformed a lot of their tea fields into lumber growing forests. And so they lost a lot of light. And that was really sad to see in here. So we came back from our walk and the leaves had come out of the fermenter and they were already looking quite brown.
わあすごい。
茶色になってきたよ。
はいはいはい。
もう香りがちょっと紅茶っぽくなってきて。
茎から。
And I'm saying there that it smells like crimson tea. And then Mr. Kawakami is lighting this shelf toaster oven unit. And he's going to cook it. And what's interesting is how he moves the shelves around, controls the heat. So there's a very specific process here. There's and each farmer is going to be a little bit different. And we're going to find that the flavors are going to change drastically depending on at what point they're going to stop what process. So when do you choose to bring it out of the stove, right? And so just removing some twigs. We can already see quite a vibrant and beautiful look.
でこれ乾燥したら全部消えるんですか？
これ？そうそう。
すごい綺麗ですね。
ちょっと写真撮っていい？作ってるとこ見るの初めて。
So I'm seeing the same thing twice.
緑っぽい部分も入るんですね。
Okay. This just gives you a sense. He's pulling it out. He's got a very much, it's a very analog system, but it's very precise. He's got a thermometer sitting in there. He's checking the temperature.
色変わりました。
変わってきたよ。
And I'm just commenting how the colors has changed, or the smell has changed. I find this whole like idea of fire and flavor change just absolutely fascinating. Number the drawers so you can kind of track where you're at with where they are. Because if you just keep the tea in the drawers at the bottom, then it's not going to be as ideal. You want to even things up so that you're getting a similar exposure to different levels of heat. The further you are away from the flame, of course, the cooler it's going to be. As well constructed as these units are. And then at the very end, though, he says it's all about feel. You know, you do all those precise measurements, but then you really gotta get a sense for is it done. And just now he's like, you know, it needs a tiny bit more. It's fascinating because you know you can measure and grow your experience, but yeah, if you don't have a sense from year to year what tastes good. What's interesting is they haven't made crimson tea and black teas for their entire career. This is a fairly new thing for them. It's just gonna dry it or sort of air it out in this bamboo basket. And then it gets stored once it's aired out into these tea chests. This is old school. You see a lot of the really old tea shops with these tinfoil lined wooden cedar boxes. And they're very, very good at protecting the tea. The smells, you just don't get it from me showing you this right now, but the smells, the aromatics as it comes out of the finished firing unit are absolutely incredible. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Yeah. And here he's just getting a sense again. He knows the weight of the box, and he can get a sense of the finished weight of the product. And it's just a way of tracking, at the end of the day, what is his percentage of moisture loss via this whole process. And at the very end there, when he was firing it, he was doing two things. He wasn't just blowing moisture off to get a finished product. He was also killing the PPO enzyme. So, and that's polyphenol oxidase. So, okay. That's that. Mandokoro, again, hundreds of years of history growing tea. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous growing environment. Very experienced tea farmers producing teas that are very complex. Did some reading on the origin and trying to understand where that complexity of flavor comes from. Why do seeded cultivars taste so much more complex? And I guess a little bit of it is it is hit or miss, in that you could get a cultivar that doesn't taste that good when you're growing from seed, and you do get a little bit more sort of certainty when you grow from your sorry, I just had a phone ring. Distracted me. When you grow your cultivars from seed. So apparently, and if they try to grow cultivars from cuttings, the snows in the wintertime crush them and they get destroyed, and they actually have like a 0% success rate. Whereas if they grow their seeded cultivars, then they still have an issue with the teas, with the tea plants getting crushed by the 2-meter snows that fall in the mountains of Shiga, but they spring back up in the spring. And that's punny. But they just really have no choice. But at the end of the day, when you do these beautiful crimson teas, and when you utilize the experience that they have on this kind of really old style of making tea, you see that this is a blessing. I think at first, and probably one of the reasons why the region is less popular as a producer, is that they just can't make that transition to bulk commercial tea production. So their hand is sort of forced to protect these old traditions due to the terrain, due to the elevation, due to the snowfall. And so they're sort of turned into, through happenstance somewhat and through choice, guardians of a very old style of tea production. And it's delicious. It is really good. And I believe that if we can understand a little bit about what makes these old tea producing regions unique, and we get a chance to taste some of the very small amounts of production that's still left, it's amazing. Because when they stop harvesting the leaves, and that does happen most of the time if you're traveling around Japan, the trees go wild. But for whatever reason, in Mandokoro, when you stop harvesting the leaves, they sort of recede and die off. The plants seem to be very dependent on human harvesters, and if you don't harvest them, they disappear, and that's sad. So the youngest people in the village are in their 70s as the average age for people that are there long term, and it'd be lovely if we can see things turn around in the village. I think bringing an interest and an understanding to just what's possible is going to help to preserve this really incredible culture. So when the Kawakami teas do become available, which should be in August, I would love you to go onto our webpage, choose a Kocha Zairaishu by Kawakami. That's the one you want to go for. And I think you'll really, really enjoy it. So this week, it looks like we have another week where we weren't able to get through to Sherri or over at Sister Speak. But c'est la vie. That's how it goes sometimes. We're looking forward, though, to seeing you on Thursday next week, 1 o'clock. We'll keep doing these JagaVisions. This is our 64th week. We look forward to 65, 100, 300. We'll just keep them coming. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Facebook, head over to youtube.com/JagaSilk. And if you click the subscribe button, you'll know when we go live. So let people know about this. If you have any questions, you can also be joining in the chat room when we go live, which is kind of fun. And kind of drink along if you join our newsletter. You'll get a little bit of a sneak peek of what we're going to drink next. Thank you for watching. See you again next week. I'm Jared Nyberg, co-owner JagaSilk. Thanks.